My name is Dick Dougherty. I'm new to the Berea area, and we're taping this because I couldn't make it for the Sunday that normally they have these talks. I apologize for that, but it was a scheduling issue. But if there's any other questions, other than the mass of people that are here today, you can find me at dickdougherty.gmail.com. We also have a gallery on in a studio down at 130B North Broadway in Berea in Old Town. And my background, I'll give you a little bit of background. It says it up there. I'm a retired professor from Murray State University. I was the chair of the Department of Art and Design for 21 years, and before that I was a faculty member and administrator at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth, and also at a small art school in New Bedford, Massachusetts called Swain School of Design. My last position there was acting president. I'm gonna use my my website here, which is at dickdoughertyweebly.com. There's a dot in between Dick Dougherty and Weebly. And we use that to kind of walk through what I've been doing, what I've been up to for the last few years. I'm going to show you some new stuff. I've got one of the newer things here on the table here. I've done about 40 or 45 of these watercolors in the last couple of years. Mostly of fruit and sweets. I've also just started a series of, which I don't think I'll show today because I don't think I have them on, there's not on the website yet, but of watercolors of mug shots. So I've done about 5 of those so far, and so if you want to see those, I'm sure they're going to be hot sellers down at the gallery, but those are happening also. So newer things, as I said, I want to show a few of those, and I want to go on to some of the past history. Talk about where I came from, and do I go out of frame when I move here?
It gets pretty dark.
All right. So the newer things are, as you see here, like the red tomato here. They are watercolors. My interest in this started when a couple of years back when I first moved to Berea. My wife works out of Berea College. She's been here for 7 years. We've both been together here for almost 3 years, and in the house since I've retired from Murray State. I went to a drawing class at the college, Berea College, and I was doing they have Tuesday night, usually Tuesday night every semester, there's a life drawing class, and I went there and I started, I really loved to teach and do wet media in my drawing classes and life drawing classes, and what I was teaching, but I didn't get the time to kind of spend on those and concentrate on those while I was teaching at the same time. So I wanted to try some of those, the pen and water-based things in that drawing class. I ended up just doing pen drawings, and annoyingly they're, because you can't erase doing pen, it's kind of hard, but it also it focuses your concentration because I can't make a mistake. If I put one dot there, I can't take it back off again. So let me figure out how to advance this, I think. Come on. Yeah, no. Well, maybe no. I'll show you a couple of these. So not only the fruit and vegetables, I've also been doing some sweets. So this is called Chocolate and Sprinkles. It has a number on it.
Why do you number your?
The reason for the numbering is, well, I could do a couple of these. this is not difficult to understand. That's really the date. November 22nd, 2014. So I can do a couple of these a day, and I may do even, and sometimes I do two of the same one. I take my own images of these. I shoot them, and probably for this particular, I only did one of these because this is 6 inches by whatever. So those sprinkles are like life-size sprinkles. They're not easy to draw, so I haven't done many of the sprinkle ones.
What do you call your color palette to the side, besides color palette? I really like that.
A lot of people do.
Interesting.
I wasn't intending that to be part of the work until the second one or so, and then everybody said, "Oh, I like that," and they got the same reaction. And then it's a way. I do this when I'm oil painting. I even do it when I'm drawing with pencil or graphite or whatever. I'm testing, if I'm doing pencil, I'm testing the sharpness of the pencil or getting it smooth enough. So I'm doing these little sketches on the side just to soften the pencil. In the watercolor, I'm doing sort of the same thing. I'm trying to find out whether it's wet enough, dry enough, the right color, the right value.
But
and
since
it doesn't matter
the
that much.
actual colors that you used in your painting, it just looks like its own art. It's really lovely.
It's also, I also like it because it refers to the process, and that it's an understanding sort of that it isn't magic. It isn't. It's not a real chocolate covered donut thing. It's a drawing or a painting of a chocolate covered donut thing. It's a reference, in my mind, it's a reference to that it's a man-made thing also. So that's part of what I think about. Sprinkles are hard to paint. They're small.
So your process on these, you're doing an ink drawing and then you're applying watercolor?
Watercolor first.
Oh.
Well, first comes the photographs.
Right.
First comes the shopping for the objects. So this is from this donut or thing comes from it is a donut. It has a hole in the middle, but it's a big oblong one from I don't remember the name of the donut shop. You come in from Bluegrass Parkway, and it's right there, the first thing.
Dough Daddies.
Dough Daddies, yes. It's one of their specialties. I did one from Gigi's, which is another donut place in Richmond Road in Lexington.
That's a cupcake place, yeah.
So I do want to. Look, I'm copying it.
I know my donut shop.
Going back.
Thankfully for my waistline, I'm no longer taking the BJ Parkway daily.
Yeah.
Sorry, we'll edit this out. So along, oops, don't want you to do that. So along with those paintings, those watercolors, before that I did a series of paintings, and I have one over here, and they're framed in a kind of sort of a gallery kind of frame. Again, they're 6 inches by 6 inches. The reason why they're so small is I used to do, and I'll show you some examples in the older paintings, or I've done paintings 6, 7, 8 feet tall, and most of the time I'm painting things that are life size or bigger, which makes this bigger than life size. Actually, this is bigger than the real pear itself. I found that easier when I was to get all the stuff in it that I wanted, it was better to be bigger than life size, because I don't have, I thought I didn't have, you'll understand why I'm saying I thought some of the portraits out in the library have these little heads, which I'm doing right at the moment, and so they go against that grain of I need more space to make more marks in it. Actually, I made it small, made these portraits small, so I wouldn't put so many marks in it. So you would focus on the individual, and that's the reason for the small portraits. So I did this series, and I did 20, 25 of these or so, and the other I want to. Well, you're going to have to see the portraits out in the lobby, because I don't have any of those on my website yet, because I just started doing the portraits in November. So these are older portraits. This is an older portrait. This is bigger than life size, and that's probably a pretty good segue back to the older paintings, or giving you a background of. Giving you a background of what my education, where I am, where I come from, and where
early ones.
early work. I found this somewhere, and I only put it in there on my website because there was somebody else who showed that did lectures. A friend of mine that taught drawing at Berea State. He always started his lectures with a drawing he did when he was 3, and he explained how all his work it's just like that. I can't say that about this. So my background comes from I was born south of Boston, in a town Boston, in a town called Quincy, John Quincy Adams' hometown, and the other guy, the son or the father, I can't remember which one is which is only. So I'm a city kid. I grew up one street from the main drag in Quincy, but that was 1946, so it wasn't that busy. It's probably it probably wasn't as busy as I can imagine it to be at this point. But we used to go into Boston and take the train into Boston, and we didn't have subways at that time. And then when I was 3rd grade, I think they decided to get me out of the city because I would wander around the city too much, and they were scared. My older sister didn't do that, and why would the little guy run around the city, coming home from school, walk home from school. So my educational background, I was not a very good academic student. In high school, really I was interested in art classes and shop and mechanical drawing and those kinds of things. And I wasn't skilled academically. I went on to a private art school named Swain School of Design, which I already mentioned because I ended up teaching there and being an acting president there for a while. It was a figurative-based school, meaning that I really did, you're really taught from a basis of observation and looking, and so you can see the paintings here. I'm not going to enlarge these unless somebody asks me to enlarge them, because the interface here is not. Go up. Oh, it's a card to my mother from Richard.
Yes.
It's a pop-up thing too.
You made it pop up.
Well, it was a, it was some. It was in, 3rd grade or whatever. They just said, cut out, make it this way. I didn't invent
So
pop-up.
are those swans?
Yeah. So I mean, it's okay. So the early paintings in the first art school I went to, there's three. I mean, I didn't do just three. I was a painting major, and these are some of the earlier ones. These are later ones, and that self-portrait up there was from in the studio at Swain. And then after that, I went on to graduate school at Maryland Institute College of Art, and I also finished up my academics there because this was just an art school at that time. Didn't have academic classes other than art history. So I went on to finish my academics at Maryland Institute, and I was taken in as a pre-MFA, they called it at that time. And I did, I was working in a painting class and did a lot of model paintings, and then when I finally got full-blown into the MFA program, I was doing paintings like this, and this is bigger than life size, so it's a painting about this tall, over 6 feet tall. My principal faculty member there was Grace Hartigan, a second generation abstract expressionist. She was not too thrilled with what I was painting, but she was sort of supportive. But I think that was a really good, it was really good for me that she was a real pain in the ass. She was a pain in the ass to everybody. But she would come into my studio and say, well, what the hell are you painting this blank stuff for? Four-letter word inserted there. And it really did make me think about why I was doing it, because I really liked all kinds of different kinds of things. So you can sort of see it after I left graduate school. These are things done just after I got out of graduate school. These still lives, I'm dealing with some issues of drama or narrative in the work. These are really early. The two with the balloons were sort of, kind of trying to find some sense of drama in a still life, because I really like doing still lives. I still do. So, oops. Oh. Let me move through some of these. Another big, again, there's lots of paintings in between. So this is kind of interesting. When I was after graduate school and before I got a full-time teaching job in 1976, I was working construction and working in a large factory building, and we were painting the outside of the windows, and we were always doing things sort of not very safe. There was always this fear of falling, and after I painted this painting, I felt okay after that. It was sort of like therapeutic. So I did all kinds of things. After that, let me skip through some of the weirder things.
You did a lot of furniture. Why do you think that was?
Holds up the objects.
But there's a lot of detail. You know, the one on the bottom left over there is much more about the table from my point of view than what's sitting on it.
After I did a lot of these, and there's many more than what you see here, this was sort of I really, after doing a lot of these big still lives, which you'll see in a while, I always kind of come back to this. I came back to this painting here with the idea that this is what I really like to do. I don't necessarily like some of the other stuff. That's what I really love to paint, the objects. So a lot of the stuff you see now are really, there's no compositional things going on. It's set right in the middle. It's very, it's not an asymmetrical design. It's a very straightforward design. So I've done some portraits before. That was a paid portrait. The woman here, this is Sue Underwood. Sue Underwood was actually the Underwood deviled ham person, her and her husband. They were big supporters of the arts and loved to make stuff also. This is the last portrait I did up in the top. This guy in the blue jacket here. The last one I did since I started the ones recently in November of last year. The reason why I didn't do any more, it's about life size, or a little bit bigger than life size. His daughter came to me and said, "What the heck did you make him smile for?" I said, "I didn't make him do anything. This is how he wanted to look. Did what your dad wanted me to do." And she was very adamant that wanted me to come back and repaint the mouth. And I said, "Your dad doesn't want me to repaint the mouth, and he's the one that wrote the check." So it wasn't what I wanted to do with my paintings. I mean, I'm really at this point, I'm an academic. I'm teaching, doing a full teaching schedule. I really wanted to make the paintings that I'm really interested in making, whether they're dumb or stupid or whatever. I'm really still being an observationally based painter and working very hard at that. Showing in New York at this time, some of this stuff. Let's do that one. That was a quick edit on some goofy paintings. After I got through with those things, I always had a sort of a passion for pattern, and I always liked pattern, like Ong paintings and David paintings, and they always had a good amount of pattern in them, and I never used it, and I was kind of afraid of it a little bit. So the only way to deal with that is just to go whole hog pattern. So I started doing these series of paintings. This was the first one that I did. And I said, well, that looks okay. So I went on to do some really elaborate pattern on pattern things, as you can see in some of these. And these are pretty big. Not this one, but this is 3 by 3 feet or 3.5 by 3 feet. That's like 4.5 by 5, 4.5, well, 4.5 feet wide, I guess. You can sort of see some of these heavily patterned paintings. We do political things once in a while. This is a painting of Ronald Reagan on, I think, his second election.
On camo?
Yeah. These paintings are pretty dark. I still really like these paintings. This painting's hanging in my bedroom. That one's hanging over the bed. That one's hanging on the other side of the bed. My younger son has that one. Pattern. Still living in New Bedford at this time. I also did a lot of, and you can see these are just drapes on a black background with black pattern. I would go shopping for New Bedford was a big town for
it was definitely
cloth,
the 80s.
Cloth and other stuff, so I could find remnants all the time. So I would just go to the remnant store, factory remnant store, and just pick endless. I'm going to enlarge this one. Maybe. Ooh. Well, that doesn't look anything like it. Yeah, sorry. That doesn't look good. I wanted to brag about that one. Let me try the other one. I did 2 of these. Now that's blue too. Huh. It's not blue on the screen, the computer screen. Well, the other paintings looked okay. I mean, they look computer. edit. So I did a series of, by now you probably can tell I work in a sense of series. So I do these things for a while and then I decide that I'm done with that. I'm moving on. I did maybe 10 of these. And this was a transition from New Bedford to Kentucky. I think this was one, the red one. I hate to open it up because it'll look blue. The red one was done in Kentucky. Come on. Oops. There it is. Ah! I'm clicking too fast. Okay. Well, that was okay. It's a little dark for the painting itself. A little bit lighter and obviously a little more detailed than that. So these are, well, you can see 44 by 32. But the canvas, this is the canvas from here to here. And this is actually cloth on the in the frame, and then this is a 1 by 4 poplar. This is where I really started to think about the framing of the work and how the work looked in context of the frame, and that the frame and the work itself is an integral part and part of the object. Instead of it's just a painting. It's not just a painting. It's an object. And I
is
think
the base painted, or is that base sitting in front of the painting?
No, everything inside this rectangle is the painting. This is cloth.
There's so much depth that it's hard to tell painting from not painting.
Yeah, when you see it in life, it's set off.
It's a compliment.
It's just it's mounted on the surface, so you can see the side of the. But this is as I said, a start of thinking of the painting as an object, much like a piece of sculpture. That it's not just the stuff where the smeary oil stuff is on. It's the whole thing is about is what it's about. These happened one day. I was in the studio in New Bedford, and I had a piece of cloth on the wall behind a setup, and I had two setups, and I had one just a piece of cloth hanging on the wall, and I instead of hammering another nail, I put the painting in front of the cloth, and I as a lot of artists do, we sit there and look at things for a long time, and I decided, kind of after looking at it that way for a while, I said, I really like that. I always thought the paintings were really busy, especially the pattern paintings. And they didn't, their busyness with a small frame around them, the frame didn't contain their busyness. It was just too intense, and somehow adding another layer of intensity around it allowed it to calm down a little bit. For me anyway, and I guess for other viewers that like them. So that was sort of the start of being a little bit more serious about about including the frame as a part of the work of art, and later on, as I'll show you in the paintings, I won't show you all those. I'm just sort of hitting highlights. If you want to see them, go back to the go to the website and take a look. This is a series I did. I call it the museum series, and the museum series had something to do with the frame. Is that I really wanted to make paintings that looked like they belonged in a museum, and so these all have very elaborate frames, and the frames are built. This one and this one too, are all this profile of the wood. one day at a museum I was going through, wanting to have, thinking about making very elaborate museum-style frames. Most of the time you look at the frames and say, how the heck were they built? And gee, I couldn't do that. How would I do that? And I started thinking about the process of, because I actually was a carpenter. I had my own business. I liked doing, besides painting and drawing, I also liked building stuff. So this is also a way to kind of get that part of myself. I said I liked shop in high school, remember?
Right.
And like making stuff. So that satisfied me in a different way. But I figured out that I could make things out of stock molding from the lumberyard. And most of the stuff that I do, these are all profiles of, this is a new frame that I've been making for the little portraits that are out in the library. And I've done about 9 of those since November. These are also made out of stock moldings, pretty much, except for the textural part. Well, you'll have to see that because I don't have any of those images in this particular slideshow. Look at them in the library. I'll come down to the gallery down in Old Town. The only fancy part of this is this textured part, which is not all that fancy. It's on what they call a piece of lattice, 1 1/4 inch lattice, and this is modeling paste that's just scratched on, troweled on, and scratched through to make the texture. And the texture comes from, the need for the texture comes because I was looking at, over the summer I was lucky enough to go to a lot of museums around the Baltic Sea and countries around the Baltic Sea, and looked at a lot of paintings and a lot of portraits and a lot of Dutch style frames, and that's what I'm making currently. That style frame, which is smaller versions of that, are in the glass case in the library. So these paintings, a lot of them I did on a sabbatical. I did about 20 of them in a 1 semester sabbatical I have had in 2001, 2002. I know what I'm doing. I'm clicking twice instead of once. I'm doing the Mac thing. I got about 22 of these. These are, the painted themselves are 12 by 12. The frames are all handmade by me, and this is another version of that of a texture. It's the same texture that's on the new Dutch style frames, or it's the same tool on the Dutch style frames. It's just combed through. You have to do it. You put the modeling paste out and comb through it within a minute and a half or 2, because you have to get it done before it starts to harden up. This is imitation gold leaf, and it has to be varnished over because it will. Real gold leaf doesn't tarnish as fast as this stuff does. So you touch it, you'll get your fingerprints on it. So you have to coat it with something. So most of these were not altered from the original color. Each one has a different kind of background or underpainting. This has a green underpainting, if you can see that. And that's sort of, these frames were made for each particular painting. So every painting has the oh, it does advance. Yay! It advanced.
So at this point, you really had changed pretty much to this subject matter for everything?
Yes, as you can tell, the titles. I was going to get to the title part. Thank you, Joyce. So these are really more narrative-based paintings. They're still life with a narrative involved in it. Also, the frames are part of that narrative sometimes. The frames are made for each painting, as I said before. Well, this one has, and this one's called Bush and the Lemmings, or the Rush to War in Greens and Yellows. It's a very long title, but it refers to the subject matter. The lemmings, the limes. The lemmings are running over to the cliff over here on the right side of the painting, and Bush is the leader, the big pear. So that's sort of the symbolism, and the little lemming is looking over the edge. So that's kind of what that's about. So I'm doing these in 2011. I'm sorry.
1, 2. You said 1 or 2?
It was right during the World Trade Center. 2001. So I'm thinking about this as I'm working that fall after 2011. You know, you're listening to stuff, and all this stuff is going on in your head, and being someone from the Northeast, and Northeast liberal pinko commie.
You keep saying 2011.
I'm not a commie, but it's in the family.
9/11.
Yeah, 9/11 in 2001.
So you can sort of see what I'm thinking about as I look at these. This one had, well, you can sort of see what the title is. Whoops. It's a little odd that I would do something that has reference to the Bible, or this is more of a reference to a Montaigne painting of Adam and Eve being cast out of the garden. If you know that painting, the pairs are almost in the same relationship to each other. I think Adam's the one that's straighter, and Eve was leaning forward, or vice versa. I can't remember, but that's what I was. It was more of a reference to art, about artists looking at art, and also sort of see in the corners of this. You really don't see it, but there's an apple drawn in the corner of each one, in sizing, and so drawing into the wet modeling paste. The Bush and the Lemmings had something else in it. This says Iraq. That says, you can't read it. This says evil, and that says war. I think that says Bush. That says Iraq. That says evil, and that says war. So there's a content. Yeah, it's hard to see it. So it's.
I'm glad you pointed that out, because I thought it was just a design, you know, sort
You're
of like
punched. These happen to be punched in with metal.
I see it very much. You can see it up.
I think that, so, and it, depending on how you read it, you know, evil, war, Bush, Iraq, Bush, evil, Bush, war, Iraq, war, you know, Iraq, evil. Yeah, I mean, it's so depending on how you put those words together, it's and then I did some other things. My dad had died a couple of years before that, so this was something about my brother-in-law taking care of my dad when he was sick in his last years. So that was one of the early ones of the series. I think it was before 2001. I did a bunch of these. I sold this to a guy in California. Came through, somehow he saw it. Well, he saw it in Paducah, and it showed I was in.
It looks very sexual.
It does.
The title says "Tempted by the Fruit of Another."
I think it's probably intentional.
He's kind of, all the. It's not this red. It's not that bright, but it's a red background. So these all have a narrative, isolated by whimsy. I mean, I did 20 of these in 3 months. So that's the color, stupid. I didn't know what to say. I just said I like to play with color, so I like to work in color. lost faith, so it's kind of more somber. Love's last fork in the road. And the pink and yellow is a reference to, it's about color also. I really love color and light, so it's really it's a reference to, hey, I like color and I like light. That has to do with me, it was oppression, and my wife said, it looks like a deformed organ. So it was very good. This is another more personal painting, but if you know the title of that song.
The Beatles.
Eric, guitar player.
Clapton?
Eric Clapton song. Would you hold my hand in heaven? I think was the name of the song.
Oh, yes, that one.
This was about. What is really a red painting, but red doesn't photograph very well. It kind of gets washed out. It becomes all the same red. And the background's a more orange red, and the red pair is not as red as that. But the sky was empty. Any guesses on this one?
That would be after 9/11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know the Bruce Springsteen song?
Yeah. Empty sky.
Yeah. And one of the World Trade Centers has a tower, has an antenna on it. One of them didn't. So it's about, and this actually these stampings around the side of this frame, and this is in fake. Well, maybe it isn't fake silver. Well, it's silver leaf.
And what are some of the words?
The numbers around the side are all the numbers having to do with 9/11. The planes, the time it hit the tower, the time it fell.
Was it therapeutic for you to do this?
Yeah, it was sort of, I had to, sort of. The flight numbers of the planes and the numbers dead, all that kind of stuff, I think. I have to look at it again. Can't read it on it, but that sort of has the, sitting in the studio, listening to music and all this other stuff going on in that fall, it's everything is so complete. This is what you would call incising, and you can see that on period frames. You can see incising, you can see that kind of carving of textures. What they would call through the gesso. The gesso on those frames is a thicker gesso, much like the modeling paste that I'm working with here. And I just thought that looked good with this particular painting. I can't remember whose song, Everything is So Complete is another song title, or the lyric to a song. It might be Bonnie Raitt, I don't remember. I think this one was another song title. So listen to music while I work. So those are another song title. That was the first one of these. It's really a portrait of my wife and I. I have a big flaw. And that's really what I'm thinking about when I'm choosing the fruit. Is that bruise or whatever. I really don't have any huge flaws, but I thought I could be somewhat humble, which is hard for me at times. Being a paid professional smartass in my career. Sorry.
A critic.
That's what professors do.
That's it.
Come on. I don't know why this got smaller.
Just hit the square up at the
other
other
side.
corner. Yeah.
This thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a PC guy. There we go.
a Mac at home and a PC here at the library, and it does get a bit confusing.
So I also did a series of war casualty paintings, and these are, the title of these are like red carnations for the war casualties, and red geraniums, or red and white geraniums for the war casualties. I did, again, this is during the Iraq War, so I'm thinking about those kind of things. So I did a bunch of, well, not a bunch, another series of. This one is hanging up in the. Come on, gladiolas. Come on, gladiolas, come on. I click the button.
Click it twice and see what happens. Do a double click.
There it is. This one's hanging up in the gallery at the moment. I really like this. It's bigger than the other ones. The frame is really huge and has all these flowers drawn into the wet. The frame really makes it. The painting is. I don't think the painting's that good, but the frame and the painting together really is. I really like this painting, but I don't like necessarily like the flowers that much. The painting of flowers.
Do you also have something hanging at the hospital?
Yes, I just there's a current. There is a show until April 20th, which this talk will be aired after the 20th. But just had 10 of the.
Well, I had a customer go through the library and say, I noticed this artist at the hospital after noticing it here. Knowing about him here, I noticed his art at the hospital. Okay.
There is 10 of. Just I pressed it twice again. Once. So there's 10 of these over at the hospital for the next few days. The reason I want to bring these up, they're just before the portraits that are out in the lobby, out in the center of the library, is to talk about my process a little bit. All the other paintings, except these are called the panel paintings, because they're done on panel. Essentially, this is a piece of what's called MDF, medium density fiberboard, and I put portrait grade oil ground linen. I glue that onto the top of it, and then I put another coat of oil ground on top of that. And the reason for all that is, let me go back to the reason why I do that. All those paintings with elaborate frames I just finished showing you, the surface gives when it's a stretched canvas, and also some of the ones that were 12 by 12 always had a hard time with the oil ground canvas to stay stretched in the summer, because heat expands. It gets hotter, it gets looser. Over the winter, it tightens back up, and I never liked that the painting was not wasn't tight to the stretcher. And you, believe me, I can pull on it really hard, but it was I never liked that, and that was a coarser canvas. Out of necessity, even the paintings that I showed you, the flower paintings and the more content-based paintings, I finally got smaller and smaller for one reason, a couple of reasons. One, that I was, had a full-time job. Was a 12-month employee, had 4 staff and 14 faculty members to deal with, and they were great most of the time, except for the ones I had to fire. But they were really nice people to work with, and they put up with me for 21 years. Is that I didn't have a lot of time to work, but I did keep active every year. I would work in the summers and and I could actually build the frames over the winter when I found time. I'm a very direct painter, meaning there's no fancy glazes or anything like that involved in it, and it has to be wet. It's an oil painting, hence the wrong titles on they're called acrylics. Diane fixed that. I paint wet on wet, so when it's dry, I very rarely go back and do anything to a painting after it's dry, or even if it's too tacky. It's a lot about the blending of the colors while they're wet. So the time I had to work, which was a short amount of time, half a day usually, so that was the reason for the small scale of these 6 by 6 inches. I could get it done in 4 to 6 hours. I know that.
When you're choosing subject matter, is that something that kind of roils around in the back of your brain and then you know, or do you say, okay, I've got a block of time, what am I going to do when you come up with something?
Well, I kind of know what I'm doing next, and always kind of rolling it around in my mind, and this came up out of necessity, time, and also I wanted to work on a panel. I wanted to work on a panel because I'll show you some other paintings later. I saw this image online of this little painting on a panel inside this huge frame. I said, "Boy, I really like that." Very elaborate frame, and I'm prone to making elaborate frames. And you'll see it later on in this group. So then naturally, the fruit, because I just finished all that series of fruit, was an easy thing, and I could find and take the photographs, and I would usually shoot about 30 of this one. I'd have a group of pieces of fruit and shoot, turn it and move it and change the light and do all that kind of stuff till it got to the point that I wanted it. And then you would go through and look at it, and sometimes edit because now I'm switching from the old process was look at the thing, paint it. This is a change over to shoot something. I don't have a lot of time. The fruit might die, or whatever. If I shoot it, then I can come back to it. And I was getting a little bit better at Photoshop. So when I would shoot the photographs, I would tweak the images in Photoshop if I had to. And I still do that with the images I have now to get it to where it looked when I took the photo. So sometimes it doesn't. The photos don't exactly look the way. And that's the frame, like the one on the bottom, more of a kind of a purposely for a gallery type setting. I originally labeled these avocados, but they are mangoes. I think one of them still I have it listed as an avocado, but those are those frames. I'm going to run through these. I did 20 or 23, 24 of these. I did some of these. Ooh, that color is not very good. That's me, looking not happy. But it's a little better. It's still too intense. I'm trying to get to the ones that have. I did a lot of. They're quick, they're fast. Enjoy working on them. If we go back to the image of that little gourd on a plate, going back to that, there's a painter named Kulik. I can't remember his first name, but I used to like a lot and used to do a lot of very simple observational work of fruit. Right? I liked his a lot, and that was part of the thinking of that. Did a lot of these. Let me move on. This is the one down there, so you can sort of see the the color difference when you take the photographs. So I don't know where those ones. I'm going to buzz through these fast and get to them. Cherries, I like that game. Did watercolor of that too. That image, same image. You can sort of see I experimented with the kinds of. I think this was silver leaf. I like that painting. So these are early. These are the first in this series. Or some of the first ones in this series. But I did, this was the first frame for those. That was that idea of, want to make this very elaborate frame around this little image.
That frame is making my mind, it's tricking my mind.
Right, looking down a long corridor.
Yeah. It took a long time to make. The current frames I'm making, these are equally annoyingly long. But I think that one was, and as I acquired tools and expertise, I took a woodworking class. I was lucky enough to teach in a program that had, since when I was working at Swain School of Design, we had a very well-renowned furniture program, and we had one at Swain. It moved from BU, program at Artisan moved from BU to Swain School of Design, and then Swain School of Design merged with University of Massachusetts Dartmouth. I was the acting president during the merger that year, which was a lot of fun. That was the year Dukakis was not elected.
Yeah.
And so there was state politics involved in that whole process. And we had a very fine furniture design program at Murray State University. Paul Sasso headed that up, and some other well-known furniture artists. So these were the early ones of these. So along with gaining my expertise and getting the tools and skills to make these kinds of frames, I also had when I did the sabbatical for all those other paintings, I went to New York. I talked to Wilner and Associates, who does reproduction antique frames, and I talked with them. I visited them, saw their they didn't show me their process, but they wouldn't show me how they would do it. So I went to visit them. They also restore antique frames, and there's still a frame that I would still like to try to make, but a kind of style of frame that the frame designer's name is not sticking in my brain, but for those that have all this kind of, these all can be made from stock moldings. This one's a little more elaborate. This is a beveled piece of wood that's a more elaborate cut, and this is a hand-shaped piece of wood at the edge. I can show you after we get through these, some other ones. I think that's it for those. Last thing, I guess, I don't know what the time is.
We have like 5 minutes.
Okay, it's perfect. Frames. So the frames, this is this. Easy thing. So this was the original drawing. I saw this particular frame. I did some sketches of it at the Columbus Museum of Art. And here's me in my studio in Murray making a series of frames. I don't have as much room. I had my wife and I shared 1,900 square foot studio in our house, behind our house in Murray, and it was very nice to have. This is the original painting that I saw online, the little portrait of this guy here, that huge frame. So I was trying to mimic that frame, not even seeing it, I couldn't find out where it was. And this is the profile of that frame. You can see this beveled piece, that shaped piece of two 3/4 inch pine. So it's a little more elaborate. And these are just various kinds of frames. I haven't had time to take pictures of I haven't put this frame on the website, and I will eventually do that. And I will eventually put the mug shots and the new portraits on the website so you can see them there. But stop by the studio at 130 North Broadway in Berea, and we're there as we're working, not all the time, but I'm there almost every day. Come and visit, ask some questions, email dick.dougherty@gmail.com, and stop by the studio. And thanks for watching.